On page 1257. And we just finished chapter 5. So Haman was in a funk. He has everything in the world, and then he sees Mordechai is not honoring him, and he comes home and he complains. He gathers his friends and Zeresh, his wife, and he tells them all of his complaints. And then Zeresh, his wife, and his friends answer him, which means she jumped to the top, right? Took the leadership role. And they said, "You're worried about Mordechai? Go into the king and have him killed. And indeed, build the gallows 50 cubits high, and hang him on the gallows, and then you'll go in to the king and be happy, because you're rejoicing because of the death of Mordechai." And we asked, why is 50 cubits important? Both, why does the text tell it to us? And given that the text tells it to us, why was it important to her that it should be 50 cubits high? And I will answer that a little later, but it's something definitely that needs to be understood.
Wasn't the first temple 50 cubits high? Wasn't that never?
I don't think so, but I don't remember. I don't remember. I'm not good with facts like that. Okay, now, that night that Haman is coming into the king to get Mordechai killed, right? Sleep eluded the king. So he ordered that the record book the Chronicles be brought and be read before the king. Now there are two terms here. The word Chronicles is what's in Hebrew Divrei Hayomim, which means history book. That word is used throughout Tanakh for a history book. Record, I don't know, in Hebrew it's the book of memories, memory book. Like my wife puts it, she says it's like a memo book, which is short for memory, right? And it's things that need to be remembered. So this wasn't Stam, a history book. This was a book of events that required to be remembered. This is where Chazal are coming from, where they say he couldn't sleep, and he thought, maybe it's because subconsciously I've failed to do something for somebody that needs to be done, and that's why I can't sleep. So he had them bring the book of memos of things to be done, because maybe there he'll find one that he didn't do. Clever fellow, he's actually right. There it was found recorded that Mordechai had denounced Bigshal of Zeresh to the king's servants, guardians of the threshold, who had plotted to lay hands on the king of Achashverosh. Mordechai was the one who revealed the plot to the king, whether it's going to assassinate Achashverosh, and his life was saved. And now, he says, Achashverosh says, what honor or dignity has been conferred on Mordechai for this? Asked the king. This is the book of memos. If something had been done, there would have been a notation, and we gave him 10,000 talents, or we made him governor of a province, or something. And the pages who are reading it say, nothing there. Nothing has been done for the replied the king's pages. The king said, who is in? Now, I don't know why the Art Scroll does this. They translate Chatzer as court. No, it's courtyard. It's not a place where the judges are sitting, deciding cases. It's a courtyard, which is the entranceway to the building. Who's in the courtyard? And here, the Haggadah and the Megillas Esther, and your translator does well, he puts in parentheses. It fills it in. Nothing's left to imagination, nothing left to deduction. It's all on the surface. Now, Haman had just come into the outer courtyard of the palace to speak to the king about hanging Mordechai on the gallows he had prepared for him. Do you get the irony here, audience? Right? He's coming in to kill him, and this one wants to reward him. Right? Beautiful, eh? So the king says, so there's Haman standing in the courtyard. The king said, let him enter. Haman came in. The king said to him, What should be done for the man whom the king especially wants to honor? Now here you hear something. If you're good at literature, you hear something already. What would you say about these words? Why isn't the king frank with Haman? Haman's his prime minister. He took off his ring and he handed it to Haman, right? He can do with it as he pleases. Why is he not being fully frank? Why is the king not being fully frank with Haman?
So he just...
No. In what way is it that he's not fully frank? How do you know he's not fully frank? I'm not asking for the psychology or philosophy of it. Where do I see from these words that he's not being fully frank?
It doesn't say to him.
I can't hear you.
Because it doesn't say specifically, it doesn't say to him.
Who's him?
And he just asks a question without pointing it to whom.
Right, it doesn't say who it is. He should have said, Haman, listen, Mordechai did me a favor, and what should we do? No, to whomever the king might want to honor. Yeah, That's not fully open. That's not fully frank, It's like hiding from him part of the project. Couldn't the person make a difference? Why would he hide from him, right? And now watch what your helpful, friendly translator puts in parentheses again. Now Haman reasoned to himself, whom would the king especially want to honor besides me? Does the king anticipate that that's what Haman's going to say to himself? You bet. Of course he does. So he's pushing Haman. He's pushing Haman into a corner. Haman's going to think it's himself. He's going to create an honor for himself, and then the king's going to tell him, do it for Mordechai. Is that nice? That's not nice. That's not nice. I have to ask where the king is coming from that he concocts this little scheme here to hit Haman in the face. Let me read to the and then we'll come back and we'll answer this question. You think about it while I'm busy. Why would the king do this? So Haman said to the king, for the man whom the king especially wants to honor, have them bring a royal robe that the king has worn, and a horse that the king has ridden. Now, here your translator takes an ambiguous phrase and puts one with a royal crown on his head. Right? What? On the horse's head, right? That's what the words say. And it is one way the Hebrew can be understood. Okay, now watch. Be careful. Let them bring the garment and bring the robe. Bring the garment and bring the horse and one with the crown on its head. Bring them. Just bring them. Now, what we're going to do with them? They let the robe and the horse be entrusted to one of the king's most noble officers, and let them attire the man whom the king especially wants to honor, and parade him on horseback through the city square, proclaiming before him, this is what is done for the man whom the king especially wants to honor. So, of course, he's thinking of himself. That's pretty great. That's pretty grandiose, right? He's going to wear the king's garment and ride on the king's horse, and whether the crown is in his head or not. So there are two ways to take it. You can take it the way it's written, and then it's straight. But you can take it that the crown should be put on the man's head, and then he doesn't mention it when actually he says what should be done. He leaves the crown out. He talks about the garment and the horse, but not the crown. And as Chazal say, because when he mentioned the crown, the king's face went white. The crown? Well, the garment is one thing, and the horse is one thing. The crown is the symbol of majesty. So put the crown on his head. So Haman saw that, he left it out. Okay, I went too far, I'll leave that part out, right? But this is what should be done. And now, king, now watch what the king says. King says to Haman, hurry, my prime minister, second in command of the kingdom, hurry! Get the robe, get the horse, you get them, as you said, and do all this for Mordechai the Jew, who sits in the king's gate. And that's not enough. That's not enough. Do not omit a single detail that you have suggested. Meaning, I'm sure there's going to be resistance here. I'm sure there's going to be a problem here. Don't omit a single detail. Isn't he pushing Haman's face in the mud? Yes, he's pushing Haman's face in the mud. Why is he doing that? Where's he coming from?
Well, he knows Haman hates the Jews, and he just realized that his outstanding debt was to a Jew. So the thing that was causing him unrest in his sleep, his solution to that is to help a Jew, and now he knows Haman wants to destroy them.
Wonderful idea, except that it's not in agreement with the facts. He doesn't know yet that the decree is against the Jews. He himself doesn't know.
The king?
Of course not. Don't remember? The king gave Haman the ring. Do with the people as you please. Haman wrote the decree, and Haman sent them out. It was all without the knowledge of the king.
He knew what Haman was going to do with that.
You're wrong, because he's going to discover it on the next day, and Esther's going to reveal it to him, and he doesn't know about it.
No, what he's going to discover is that the woman he loves is part of the Jewish people, and then that's going to complicate his willingness to let the Jewish people be destroyed.
It doesn't fit his words, but of course he could be lying when he speaks. It doesn't fit the words that he's going to say in the end of this chapter. He's saying that could he have known, but then.
And then it's the reveal of the name, of her name, which you've been alluding to this whole time.
Yeah, that's true. That's all true. Let's see. I always took it that he didn't know, that he learned also of the identity of the people who are going to be destroyed. Haman never identified who they are. Haman never identified. He just gave their qualitative description, where he said that they're defenseless and disunified, and they're despised by all the peoples. I agree with you. An intelligent person could have figured it out. I just never took it into account. Let's try your hypothesis out. So if he knows that it's a Jew, just doesn't know that it's his wife, and he's going along with it, and now one of the ways in which he's pushing Haman down, because he does stress that it's Mordechai the Jew. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, but I interpret it differently. I have to think about what you're saying more at leisure. I said, because we said already several times that the Jews were a despised people, that Haman didn't want to attack a Jew because it was beneath his dignity, and now Haman's going to do this for a Jew. I mean, that Haman's going to be leading around one of these despised people. That's enough to anticipate that Haman's going to have resistance to it, and have to be told, don't admit anything, because you'll try to cut corners, because it's disgusting things to do. Right? I can explain that without going as far as you go. But I'll admit to you, I think it's an interesting thought. I'll have to think about how to do it. Okay, so this is what he does. But my question that hasn't been answered yet is, why? Why is he looking for this opportunity to smash Haman? Yeah?
I get a connotation that he seems threatened by Haman's power, or
where would that come from? Why would it happen now?
Then
because of the two people from before, Bikona and Koresh, maybe he feels like Haman should have figured that out more.
No way. I mean, they were speaking in a language that, according to Chazal, nobody knew. Mordechai happened to be present. No, why today? Because
of Esther.
Because of Esther. Because of Esther what?
It invites him and the king.
That's right. She invites the king and Haman, nobody else, to a special banquet. Always, 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 emperors and kings are afraid of the top advisors, that they're going to get too big. Stalin had periodic purges of all his closest advisors, because if you're a close advisor, you can influence the king. If you can influence the king, other people want to use you to influence the king, and they'll bribe you, and they'll form power alliances with you. So periodically, they purge their closest advisors, and he thinks, and that's exactly what she wants him to think. That's why Esther invited Haman to the party, because she wants the king to be suspicious. Because when she finally identifies Haman as the enemy, she wants the king on her side. So she used this means to create suspicion, and she was very successful. And so he's saying, Haman's getting too big, I got to do something to pull him down, and this is what he uses to pull him down. That's one way to explain these events in a very, I think, direct, way.
I mean, I just say that
Yeah.
the king didn't even know how much he was actually taking Haman down, because I mean, it was just, it turns out that that's what he was reading in the Chronicles.
Right, he couldn't have anticipated that Haman was coming to kill Mordechai.
And then is it?
That's what the author tells us.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Good. So, 11, Haman took the robe and the horse. Maybe this is where it doesn't mention the crown. And attired Mordechai and led him through the city, proclaiming before him, this is what is done for a man whom the king especially wants to honor. Mordechai returned to the king's gate. But Haman hurried home despondent and with his head covered. Okay, because she threw the trash on him, it says in the Medrash, but it's not really directly in the pasuk. Now watch. Haman told his wife Zeresh and all his friends everything happened to him. Wife first and friend second, because that's how they gave him the Eitzah. That's how they gave him the suggestion, in that order, in that constellation. So he's coming back and saying, look what you did to me. You gave me this order and this was the result. So, again, Haman told his wife Zeresh and all his friends everything that happened to him. And now watch this. His advisors and his wife, hello, what happened? Well, they're not friends anymore. They're only advisors. And she takes back seat because she has now been disgraced, right? Look at how beautifully the text is written. Look how careful the text is. Said to him, if Mordechai, before whom you have begun to fall, is of Jewish descent, you will not prevail against him, but will doubtlessly fall before him. Now, the only way to explain this is because of part of the Jewish tradition, I can think of, and the Mepharshim talk about it, and that is that Yaakov and Esav were brothers, and Rivka, their mother, had a prophecy that they will struggle against one another, and the might will pass from one to the other. It's like a balance scale. When one goes up, the other one goes down, right? Now, Haman comes from Amalek, who comes from Esav. He's a representative of Esav, so it's Esav and Yaakov, and it's one is up, the other is down. They're not both on a par. And if you started to go down, you're going all the way down, and he's going all the way up. That's what they say to him. They say if they're not citing this from the Jewish tradition, I don't know where they would get such a they say now you're on the way out. While they were still talking with him, king's servants arrived. They hurried to bring Haman to the banquet which Esther had arranged. And now we come to the second banquet.
That's a question.
Yeah.
Maybe or more like a comment. Maybe when the pasuk says while they were still talking with him, why does the pasuk have to say while they were still talking with him? Maybe it's because to show just how true the previous statement was. That while they were still talking to him, the thing that is gonna start his descent.
It's already in motion.
Yeah.
It's already in motion. I think that's a nice observation. Yeah, very good. So, the king and Haman came to feast with Queen Esther. The king asked Esther again on the second day of the wine feast, what is your request, Queen Esther? It shall be granted you. And what is your petition? Even to be up to half the kingdom, it shall be fulfilled. The same formula, with the same words. Request versus petition, half the kingdom, the whole thing. So Queen Esther answered and said, if I have won your majesty's favor, and if it pleases the king, she knows the score. She's there because she pleases the king. That's why he wanted a wife who's beautiful, who will please him. And she knows that that's the way he's defined the relationship. The relationship is defined on my pleasure. And therefore she says, the only thing that I have that can count for me is your pleasure. She knows exactly what the score is. Let my life be granted to me as my request. Yes, I have a personal request. My personal request is that I should live and not die. And my people, which is a social, political request, bakasha, petition, as my petition. Now you can imagine the king hearing these words. What? You and your people and your life? What's going on? For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, slain, and exterminated, which are the words in the document. Had we been sold as slaves and servant girls, I would have kept quiet. For the adversaries are worthy of the king's damage. Well, those are very poetical words. The idea is I wouldn't have disturbed you for something so small as being slaves and servant girls. That I wouldn't have said. But life, for my life, my back is to the wall. I have to ask you. For that, I feel that I have to ask you. She's playing her role perfectly. I wouldn't disturb the king and for anything else but his life and death. And I think she could be implying, you don't want me to die, because I'm still the apple of your eye. So your own interest is at stake here. Just 1 second, because it bears on what he said. So, the king says, the king exclaimed and said to Queen Esther, "Who is it? Where is the one who dared to do this?" And Esther said, "An adversary and an enemy, this wicked Haman." So I always thought, at this point, she and the whole people is to be destroyed. When's the last time we did that? Well, let's see, last Thursday and last month and 2 months ago. No, it only happened once, and it was this jaunt that Haman proclaimed. He did say there was a people that needs to be destroyed, and I did give him my ring. And she's now saying that it's Haman who did it. So putting 2 and 2 together, getting 4, he's figuring out that it's her people and so forth and so on. So that's where I read it. And you're reading it as only the fact that she's involved, right? Okay, I'm not disqualifying what you say. So, Haman trembled in terror before the king and queen. He has no clue what's going on. Haman has no clue what's going on until he's, I did this? He's also putting himself into the, when did I attack the queen? Oh, don't tell me. The queen is Jewish? What? Like, this is one of the most dramatic pieces of the whole of the Tanakh. The king rose in a rage from the wine feast and went to the palace garden. He's got to cool off. He's got to deal with this. Well, Haman remained to beg Queen Esther for his life. For he saw the king's evil determination against him was final. In other words, he had made up his mind. But of course, that doesn't mean his mind couldn't be changed. But he's made up his mind that he's going to kill him. When the king returned from the palace garden to the banquet room, Haman was prostrated. It's hard to read it. Prostrated on the couch upon which Queen Esther was. What's he doing? My God, what is going on here? So the Medrash says he was standing there, bent over, begging her for his life, and the Malach came and gave him a shove. He fell, and they were on banqueting couches, right? When you had a banquet in those days, you lay sideways on a couch. You were lying down. You weren't sitting at a table. You had your own little table in front of the couch. So he's now fallen on the couch where Queen Esther is reclining. The king exclaimed, "Would he actually assault the queen in the house when I'm in the house?" When those words came out of the king's mouth, as soon as the king uttered this, they covered Haman's face, because a criminal who's been condemned to death his face mustn't show. Now comes, I'll pay you the debt that I promised. Harvaina, one of the servants and attendants of the king, said, "Furthermore, the 50-cubit high gallows which Haman made for Mordechai, who spoke good for the king, is standing in Haman's house." And your translator left out the crucial word, because Harvaina says, Hine! Hine in Hebrew means behold. What does behold mean? You don't speak that 18th century English. Behold means see. See with your eyes. Look out the window. There it is. That's why it's 50 cubits high. It's 50 cubits high because if Zeresh's advice had been followed and had been come out, they would have hung Mordechai on this 50 cubit gallows, and Haman would have been able to look out the window and see Mordechai hanging on the gallows and rejoice at the party with the king. That's exactly what Zeresh intended. And that's why the 50 cubits are important. And Charvona says it's 50 cubits. Look out the window, king. There's the gallows that they prepared for him. And that's what seals it. And the king said, hang him on it. Hang Haman on it. So you see how her plan to give joy to her husband by seeing Mordechai seeing him out the window, hanging him on the gallows, that became the sealing feature of Haman's death. It's unbelievable, right? So they hanged Haman on the gallows, which was prepared for Mordechai. The king's anger abated. That's the end of chapter 1 in this part of the interaction. One more comment, then I'll take your questions. Now let's figure this out. This Charvona guy. Wow, he's really, nice icing on the cake, right? But listen, when did Charvona find out about this? When did he know the gallows was there? When did he realize you could see it from the window? He couldn't have figured it out in the last 30 seconds, could he? Surely he had some kind of advanced knowledge. Why didn't he say it to the king when they started the party?
Why would he have?
More than that, he certainly wouldn't have, because at that time, he was prime minister, right? He was the favorite prime minister. Now that he's sinking, Charvona throws a boulder after him. The king's against him. I can add to the king's anger. I can add to the king's resolve. Totally selfish. Totally, when Haman's on top, Charvona's going to be on Haman's side. Now that he's going down, he could have kept his mouth shut. No, another way to throw a stone at the falling Haman, bang. All politics, all political, that goes on all the time. But when these guys up, you favor it. When he's going down, you throw stones at him. That's the way it's done in politics. To this very day, as you probably know. Okay, questions up there? Yeah.
Was Esther's request made with confidence? Did she know that Mordecai was to be celebrated around the city, and was right after?
I'm sure that everybody knew. Now everybody knew that. And information must have been brought to her instantly. So there's no question about that. And I said yesterday that she was confident that this would work because yesterday, when he's sitting in the inner sanctum and the law is everyone who comes there has to die, and he's got the golden scepter, which is the midas hadin, which is the characteristic of strict judgment, and she's accepted. I said everything after that is an afterthought, and because yesterday was the third day of the fast, and now they're all eating pizza and lasagna and they're having a good time, because there's no danger anymore. She knows it's going to work. And even though she carries out her part very dramatically, as you'll see, but she knows it's going to work.
Matzah?
I'm sorry?
Not matzah?
Not matzah, no. Oh, wait a second.
Because
Oh, maybe I made a mistake here. Oh, you're absolutely right. It's Pesach. I made a mistake. That's cute. To go back and change all the other videos. Sure, I made a mistake. They were having matzah, right? I don't know if they kept gabrux, so maybe they were having matzah but they're matzah balls, matzah balls and matzah ball soup.
Did they have 4 cups of Manischewitz?
Yeah, of course, got some Manischewitz. I hope not. I hope it's something better than Manischewitz. No, thank you very much. By the way, he pointed out that I made a mistake also with the number of nights that came before Esther was taken, because I was calculating from the time of the decree, but of course, if the girls were prepared for a whole year, so I have to subtract a year. So instead of 1,200 plus, it comes out to be 1,100 or less. I made a mistake over there also. Yeah.
Just to clarify too, by the way, wait, so if they were fasting, they had to miss the Seder, no?
Of course.
Okay, they did that.
We said that. And then they didn't eat matzah on the first night of Pesach.
So they couldn't eat matzah then?
Let's go back and review. That's exactly what we said, right? She said to make the 3-day fast, which meant they wouldn't eat matzah. To which Mordechai said, how can we get God's favor by violating one of his commandments? To which she said back, if Haman's successful, no one will eat matzah next year. You missed your own signal. It's what we call pikuach nefesh, life and death, and therefore it's worth it to skip the mitzvah matzah in order to pray to God to save our lives, right? So definitely they didn't eat matzah. Now, this is only in Shushan. There are Jews throughout the entire kingdom that don't know that this is going on at all. So they ate matzah. But the Jews in Shushan didn't eat matzah.
Okay. Oh, let's say something quick. So does Haman's wife, is she trying to get him killed because she hates him because he doesn't treat her as a good wife? What's?
Not at all. Her advice, I think, was quite rational.
But then she knew Mordechai was a Jew this whole time, didn't she? So why would she hit him with this comment of like, if Mordechai is a Jew, it would have to be that she didn't know.
No, of course she knew. That when he came home from the first party,
Yeah.
they were all there, and he said, I have all of this stuff, but when I see Mordechai, the Jew, sitting at the gate, it means nothing to me.
So she has this sentence where she says, if Mordechai before you begun to fall is of Jewish descent, you will not prevail against him. So why did she set him against Mordechai if she had this knowledge as well?
I don't understand. He comes back and he reports the disaster that hit him. And they say him, and they're not his friends anymore. They changed from friends to advisors, right? And she goes to the back of the line. And all of them together say, if he's really Jewish, then you're going to lose. I don't think the if here is maybe yes, maybe no, maybe only 50%, maybe he's a foundling, or something else. In other words, this is what's going to seal you. I don't think the if here is seriously. It means if in that sense. Yeah.
Also, would we say then that King Ahasuerus, is he kind of also considered one of the good guys in that term in the story?
Definitely not. The Chazal have a difference of opinion whether he was a dope or whether he was evil. But good guy not.
Because he seems to be good, at least the way that we're kind of reading it, at least near the end. I don't know. What are some of the views on him?
Well, you'll see. We haven't finished with him. We have to go through the rest of his machinations here. Yeah, in the back.
When Esther says, "My people have been sold, right, to be slaughtered," right? Isn't she talking about the king himself who sold them to Haman? Isn't she directly accusing him to his face? Doesn't that seem like a brazen, you sold my people? Was it not him who sold the Jews to Haman for all the gold?
No. First of all, Haman offered 10,000 talents of silver, and the king refused it. The king refused it immediately. And the kesef dasumlach. I don't take money. And I explained that one of his principles was to show that he was immune to bribery, so as to endear himself with the people who know that he's not in the pocket of some special interest, but rather he's doing what's good for the kingdom. So he didn't take any money. That's explicitly in the verses. He didn't take any money. And by the way, I think maybe you're confusing. 1 second. Yeah, no, it's right. So I don't know whether sold here means as if it was sold for money or just been abandoned. I don't know. It's a good question why it says sold. Let me just check the Hebrew. Does it really say? Well, probably it does. Yeah. Yeah. But there certainly was no money. There certainly was no money. Why she says sold, I don't know. It's a good question.
No, but even so,
was she not, whatever she meant, sold, given away, was she not talking about him, the king himself, who gave them away? Does it not sound like a very kind of, direct, brazen accusation, using those words?
Interesting question. In other words, it does indicate like a transfer of authority. So this plays back to my pshat. If the king didn't know that it was the Jews, he just got the description from Haman in non-specific terms, then so certainly the king's not being accused of doing something to destroy the queen. She's not accusing him of that. She's simply saying he got authority from. If she's implying he got authority from you, and the king asks who's the one who's guilty, and she says Haman is guilty. So that in this play, in this back and forth, the king is not being treated as vicious. He was protecting his kingdom from a danger, and it seemed politically good to do. But certainly, she's not implying in any way that he's responsible for attacking Jews.
Where's the selling going on here?
I said I don't know. He pointed that I don't know. There's certainly no money was involved.
There's no money.
So I don't know why it says that. I would have to look up.
It's not like Haman did any selling.
Right.
Like,
I agree. I don't know.
I'm saying figuratively or actually.
I don't know. I have to look up in the enforcement and see. It never struck me before. So, yeah.
Harbana is a new in this Megillah. He hasn't been brought up before.
Unless maybe Harvan, maybe Chazal say he's somebody else. I dimly have a memory that he's really somebody else, also with a new name. I don't remember.
He has a motivation to sink Haman, and I'm trying to find the source.
Well, he has, no. I explained that. He has a motivation to get favor of the king. The king said this, and he's saying, right, king, you're doing well. Look, even this supports what you're doing. You know, he's just patting the king on the back, right? So get favor with the king. That's all. Okay, so now,
I found something cool.
yeah.
I'm just wondering, how does Esther know, what specifically was said when she's not in the situation? Like, for example, it says that when Haman ran to his house, he was talking to his wife. How does he know? How does Esther know, or whoever wrote the book, what he said specifically? Stuff like that.
You're asking me how she knew. The answer is in the pasuk because it says that Mordechai sent the document for her to read.
Oh, okay. What happened in the castle.
When she sent Hasach to Mordechai to find out what's going on, Mordechai told him the story and gave him a copy of the document to read. That says explicitly in the verse. So that's how she knew. Yeah.
And exactly on that point, when Mordechai is relating to Esther all the information she learns, he says, and Mordechai told him of all that happened and all about the sum of money that Haman had promised to pay to the royal treasuries for the annihilation of the Jews. So the information that Esther is getting has the payment factor
maybe she
there.
doesn't know that it wasn't taken.
But Mordechai's the source.
Oh, maybe, and you know what? Maybe even Mordechai doesn't know. He knows that Haman offered it. Maybe he doesn't know that the king refused it. That would be a very simple explanation.
Which would fit with the idea that this whole thing is crazy, it's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah. Okay, maybe that's the answer. Maybe that's the answer. I would still have to check the unfortunately at it, but that could be the answer. That the money was offered, and they knew that, and Haman told her that the money was offered, and who knew that the king would say no? Because they don't correctly understand the king. This would be a second failure on Mordechai's part to understand the motivation of the king.
It was Esther saying the incarnate, no?
Yeah.
So I'm saying
That-
it would be her misunderstanding.
No. You're not following him.
Not by-
Mordechai sent a message to Esther. She got all the information from Mordechai. And he said, it says explicitly in the verse, he sent to her, and Haman weighed out 10,000 silver talents for this project. So she gets the, and Haman dedicated 10,000 talents for this project. Now, are they supposed to imagine that the king didn't receive them? The king didn't, but maybe they have no clue that that's true. So then Nimkarna would be very literal. She knows money was paid. But I don't think she's crediting that the king knew it was the Jews. That I don't think she's saying. Okay, fine. So now, watch this, however. The king said, hang him on it, and now the king is happy. Okay, let's go to tea. Let's play croquet in the garden. Wait a minute, there's a decree out to kill all the Jews, including the queen. What about that? Oh, that will take care of that next Tuesday. Is a little cavalier on his part, right? Okay, now this is now like a follow-up to what happened before. That very day, King Ahasuerus gave the estate of Haman, the enemy of the Jews, to Queen Esther. Okay, give it to the queen. Mordecai presented himself to the king, for Esther had revealed his relationship to her. First cousin, and brought me up that much. He certainly didn't reveal. According to those who say they were married, he didn't reveal that they were married. King slipped off his signet ring, which he had removed from Haman, and gave it to Mordechai. Esther put Mordechai in charge of Haman's estate. That's the property business. And here's just a little indication of something you see all over and over again in the Tanakh. It never says that the king took the ring off Haman's hand, does it? Oh, my gosh. But when he says he gave him the ring that he took, so it tells you retroactively, oh yeah, he took it off. And you're supposed to figure that goes on all the time. You have a description of people in interaction and a various conversation, and later it says, and I said X to you, and you look back, hey, the conversation doesn't say X. How about that? Yeah, because it wasn't reported there, but you got it from the latest statement, and that's the way you fill it in. You have to fill in details like that all the time. So now, watch this. There's also drama. Esther again spoke to the king, collapsed at his feet, and cried and begged him to avert the evil intention of Haman the Agagite, the scheme which he had plotted against the Jews. She's wailing on the floor, wailing and screaming and crying on the floor. Okay? The king extended the golden scepter to Esther, the golden scepter, the Midas Adin, the strict judgment, which, since the decree is still in force, is still operating in the environment, extended to her. And Esther arose and stood before the king. Now watch her speech here. She's on the floor crying and screaming and wailing, right? Now watch her speak. She said, if it pleases the king, and if I have won his favor, and if the proposal seems proper in the king's opinion, and I be pleasing to him, 4 introductions, carefully prepared, right? Pleases twice. And winning his favor, and the proposal seems good, all, you are the king, you're the emperor, everything depends upon you. I'm nothing. I'm saying something and it's up to you, and I hope it be my favor. Now, she says, let a decree be written to countermand. You never heard that word before in your whole life. Countermand means to contradict, to take back, to undo, to invalidate. Those dispatches devised by Haman, the son of Hamdat the Agagite, which he wrote, ordering the destruction of the Jews who are in all the king's provinces. For how can I bear witness to the disaster which will befall my people? How can I bear witness to the destruction of my relatives? Look at the chachma here. She doesn't say it's bad for the kingdom, it's bad for the economy, and your reputation will go down, and the army will revolt. No, I can't take it. I can't stand it. It's going to destroy me. That's all she says. That's all she says. She's a woman, and she'll be destroyed emotionally. That's it. She's not giving advice to the king. She's not informing him. She's not nothing. She's just saying, I can't stand it. That's exactly the right role. He doesn't want an advisor. He doesn't want wisdom. He doesn't want the counsel. He just wants someone who wants to please him. And she's saying, if it pleases you, and if I found favor in your eyes, and if the proposal is appropriate for you, because I'm going to be destroyed by it. And I can't help it. I'm a woman, and I'm going to be destroyed by this event. I mean, this means that when she was on the floor crying and screaming, it was all histrionics. She had a speech prepared, and it's a crafted speech, carefully thought out. Vocabulary is crafted, right? All of that was histrionics. But histrionics are important. Histrionics are important. Not only are they important psychologically, they're even important socially, because what you show is you really mean this. You're willing to go through that kind of performance. That means that you really care about this. You don't have to convince the person that you're out of control. It's a portrayal as if you're out of control to convince the person of your seriousness. So this thing is really perfectly appropriate. And now this is the response to the king. I'll tell you the question. Then the king of Achashverosh said to Queen Esther, Mordechai, the Jew, behold, I've given Haman's estate to Esther, and he has been hanged on the gallows. Why has he been hanged on the gallows? Because he plotted against the Jews. That's a very, very important statement. They're in the throne room. They're talking to him in public, right? When the king says, I hanged him because he plotted against the Jews. He's now pledging allegiance to the Jews. If that's why he hanged Haman, don't anybody else dare raise your finger. Don't anybody else dare. I hung my prime minister because he plotted against the Jews. From now on, it's court policy, don't touch the Jews. This is the revolution. This is a tremendous revolution. These very words are what set the stage for the rest of the events. Because he raised his hand against the Jews. You may write concerning the Jews whatever you desire in the king's name and seal it with the king's royal signet. For an edict which is written in the king's name and sealed with the royal signet may not be revoked. That's not enforcing what's being written now. He's saying to Esther, poor Esther, she just doesn't understand how the kingdom runs. She said to countermand the original decree, that can't be done. Because there's a rule in the kingdom, any decree that's been sent out to the provinces with the king's seal cannot be contradicted. It cannot be done. You can write whatever you want, a new edict, but what she asked for can't be done. And I think, I've mentioned this to you before, I think she's playing dumb, which is exactly what he wants, right? He wants a dumb wife. He wants an unintelligent wife, an unsophisticated wife. He wants someone who's beautiful and pleases him. So she asks for something which she knows is wrong. And she said, yeah, it's wrong. Go back to the kitchen. Put on your makeup, and get a new dress. Policy's not for you. I don't want to do anything to destroy you, right? And psychologically, emotionally, but for advice, Baruch Hashem, you're useless. That's what I wanted, someone who's useless for these things, right? However, you just have a little bit logical problem now. Okay, so write whatever you want. So figure out how to save the Jews by writing a new decree. Not by countermanding the old one, because that's impossible. And that's exactly what they do. They save the Jews by writing a new decree, which doesn't countermand the old one, doesn't contradict the old one, just manages to save them even so. Okay? You got a question?
Yeah. More like a note. In Pasuk 4, when it says the king said the gold scepter to Esther, and so, etc., right? So, as well as we can maybe interpret that as well as Achashverosh was saying gold scepter, we can interpret it as Hashem.
100%. Every time it says the king without saying his name, it's both. It's absolutely both. And the same is true with when he's sitting in the inner sanctum. It means that Kodesh Baruch Hu was accepting her.
Right, that's what I was building on.
100%. 100%. 100%. Yeah.
So one thing that I originally saw here was when she's saying, I can't witness the destruction of my people, and she's appealing to him, it's also appealing to his ego by saying that you're the one who will determine if the Jewish people are destroyed or not, as opposed to what she and Mordechai believe, which is that Hashem will determine it, even if Esther fails. But it's also saying here that in the king's opinion, Esther again spoke to the king. So maybe as she's appealing to Ahasuerus for this, and really she's appealing to Hashem.
100%. All the way through. All the way through, it's double.
Okay.
All the way through, it's double. I don't know about appealing to the ego business. She's just portraying herself as being, going to be destroyed. She doesn't say they're innocent, they didn't do anything wrong, they're really loyal, it's an injustice. None of that. No justification whatsoever. I'm going to be destroyed by it. I'm asking you to save me. I'm asking you to save me, which, by the way, in male-female relations is a very powerful thing to do. For a woman to say to a man, save me, that calls up all the instincts of, superior strength and superior ability and so on, and she's relying upon me. That's something that's universal throughout Jewish history. The damsel in distress, the captured princess. I mean, there are 1,000 stories like that, right? So she knows exactly how to play it, and that's exactly the result that she gets. And now the question is, okay, so we'll talk about that on Sunday, Mr. Hashem, exactly how they manage it and what the decree is. You could probably imagine that I enjoy teaching this very much.